Mistakes and botches sometimes happen in this crazy old business, and sometimes a match that looks quite riveting on paper just doesn't really turn out that way in the real world. So I'm Gareth, this is What Culture Wrestling, and these wrestlers just had their worst match ever. Rhea Ripley versus Maxine Dupri, WWE Raw, December 11th. Throughout her time on top, Mammy has put in some pretty impressive displays in between the ropes, hasn't she? After producing an absolute ripper against Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania 39, creating magic with Zelina Vega in Puerto Rico, and even wrestling a gem of a contest against Natalya in 2023 on Raw, it honestly just looked like Mammy could not miss. But then someone had the bright idea of chucking the incredibly inexperienced Maxine Dupri into a singles match with the Nightmare, and guess what? It was a nightmare. With the Alpha Academy member only having a grand total of checks notes 1 match before this collision with Rhea Ripley, no one was honestly expecting the pair to put on a clinic. However, what followed was easily one of the most uncomfortable squashes of recent times, and easily Ripley's worst match on the main roster. A wonderfully savage start saw Rhea just absolutely nail Maxine Dupri with a couple of clotheslines, and I was thinking, so far so good. But then came the numerous awkward attempts to powerbomb Dupri, a hugely clunky Hurricane Rana reversal, and the most uncooperative riptide you ever did see. Ripley at least looked like a beast when she locked in the prism trap and bent Dupri in half. It was pretty damn savage, but the damage at this point had already been done. Both performers were pretty much set up for failure here because Rhea didn't look any better after this really ugly one-sided dominant smash. And then you gotta feel for Dupri because I bet her confidence was in bits after this. What a damn shame, I say. And as we are getting close to WrestleMania and Rhea Ripley had such a banger at it last year, I want to know right now, what is your favourite WrestleMania women's match of all time? Let me know in the comment section down below. Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell versus Piper Niven and Chelsea Green, WWE Raw, January 15th. Over the last few months, Papa H has at least pretended to give a damn about a women's tag team division that's been an afterthought for about 90% of its existence. But in one of those many heatless tag contests that Triple H has just chucked onto Raw recently, the wonderful Candice LeRae found herself in the middle of what can only be classed as her worst WWE match maybe ever. Teaming alongside her The Way pal Indy Hartwell in a match against the unlikely pair of Chelsea Green and Piper Niven on the January 15th Raw, numerous botched spots and a clear lack of chemistry only gave fans more of a reason to stay silent. LeRae in particular was actually responsible for the biggest blunder in the 3-minute mess, awkwardly botching a springboard moonsault during the finish. That discombobulating conclusion also led to the rather embarrassing visual of Hartwell attempting to go for the pin, realizing she wasn't legal, then just rolling away, and then LeRae sneaking her arm in for the pin as the count was still going on. It was weird. Roman Reigns versus Jay Uso, SummerSlam 2023. At a glance, given the fact that this lackluster summer performance went down in August, it may seem a little bit weird to class Roman Reigns' tribal combat fight with his cousin as a recent disappointment. But with the tribal chief only wrestling 2 more matches, including his upcoming Royal Rumble 4-way, since this thing went down, it definitely somehow still counts as a recent display. I know, madness. And oh boy, it was a tribal stinker, wasn't it? In a head-of-the-table run that has finally seen Reigns level up to become a consistently captivating megastar and big match player, his SummerSlam war with Jay Uso easily ranks as the worst defense of his entire 1200-day plus reign. Dragged out melodrama laughing off the no interference stipulation, and then you had the weird, underwhelming / distracting Jimmy Uso heel turn in there as well. Tribal Combat had the potential to be a gripping spectacle and a hugely emotional end to this particular chapter in the Bloodline saga, but instead just became the flabbiest, most predictable slog of Roman's run. And just a boring showdown that proved to be the first real miss of one of the greatest long-term storylines in WWE history. The Judgment Day versus Awesome Truth, WWE Raw, January 15th. As this list will highlight again before its end, January 15th's edition of Monday Night Raw was a pretty tough watch for those fond of impressive in-ring action, or even just a story that makes any real sense. In truth, pun sadly not intended, all the blokes involved in the Awesome Truth's battle with the Judgment Day would prefer to forget this extended ineffective comedy skit ever occurred. And while the Miz and R-Truth have definitely been involved in their fair share of deeply cringy lol matches over the years, this was one of the first times that Damian Priest and Finn Balor had been properly dragged down by the unfunny WWE nonsense as a unit. Truth's inability to decide whether he wanted to relive the good old days with Awesome Truth or just assist the Judgment Day throughout this 10-minute match was pretty painful to watch at times. with WWE's attempts to make folks care about the tension between Truth and Priest really flopping on the night too. Priest came out of the thing looking like anything but a future world champion. Miz looked like an idiot for getting involved in the thing in the first place because, like, you knew that Truth wanted to be in the Judgment Day. Why were you in this match? Balor seemed like a chump for just getting knocked on his ass by the slapstick character, and a once super hot Judgment Day act felt neither amusing or compelling in what was easily their worst ever display as a unit. The entire thing was the worst kind of dumb, silly, and it just didn't make any sense. Cheers for watching today, my friends, and if you're enjoying this What Culture goodness, then hit that subscribe button down below. Nikki Cross, the WWE Women's World Title #1 Contendership Battle Royal, WWE Raw, November 6th. What on earth is going on with Nikki Cross in WWE? In the wake of finally dropping her almost a superhero character and reverting back to her nutty old ways of old, the former Raw Women's Champion competed in the 2022 Women's War Games match. She almost bid the 24/7 title, and then she began stalking Candice LeRae. Then nothing. Well, that's not entirely true because WWE has used her occasionally on Monday nights, but with the company seemingly not having any real plan for this kooky character, they just resorted to dumping the star out there with a blank expression on her face for a few months, like, I'm weird. Easily the most embarrassing moments in this particular chapter of the Cross story, though, came during a Women's World Title #1 Contendership Battle Royale on November 6th, as the former Money in the Bank briefcase holder put in what is comfortably the worst performance of her entire WWE career. Wasn't really her fault though, let's be honest. Caught between the two monsters that are Nia Jax and Raquel Rodriguez, Nikki Cross became the human punchline to what was yet another dreadful Papa H joke, because the hypnotized character was literally thrown straight out of the match within seconds. And then after that, what did she do? What did this crazy old character do? Well, she just stared out into the audience for a while, and then moved a little bit, went in front of Wade Barrett and did the exact same thing. What is she like, eh? The Hardys with Mark Brisco versus Kip Sabian, The Butcher, and The Blade. AEW Rampage, January 5th. Now, there was definitely a time there when Matt and Jeff Hardy were two of the most exciting and innovative wrestlers on the entire planet. As a tag team they were, yeah. But judging from their plodding display against Kip Sabian, The Butcher, and The Blade, that time is over! The two legends will always have their fiercely loyal supporters, and it's pretty hard not to pop every time Jeff Hardy does that swanton bomb that breaks people's chests nowadays. But both Hardys still felt largely off the pace during this trio's battle. Sabian and co sold the veterans often limp attacks as best they could, and Brisco was able to inject some much needed fire late on with his incredible froggy bow elbow for the finish. And look, the Hardys still have it in them to produce a few flickers of glorious chaos when they've got the right dance partner, but this early January Rampage fight was a really tough watch at times, and perhaps a sign that it's time to leave the tag team dimension behind for good. Willow Nightingale versus Chris Statlander, AEW World's End 2023. Make no mistake, Willow Nightingale and Chris Statlander are two of the most impressive and consistent performers on the entire AEW roster. I love them. Both ladies are easy to root for, they've got some seriously powerful offense, and they very rarely have a dull match, do they really? The pair's World's End pre-show match wasn't exactly a boring fight either. It just ended up being remembered more for its quite terribly botched finish than all of the tremendous work that came beforehand. Giving their all and beating the crap out of each other with some wicked spine busters, some devastating suplexes, and pretty gnarly powerbombs. And from there, the pair just weren't really able to recover, which was a bit of a shame. As after this, Nightingale ended up botching her Doctor Bomb not once, but twice. And an initially quite engaging performance from Nightingale, which was to be expected because she's awesome, soon became Willow's worst in AEW to date. And that second attempt went so badly wrong that it did appear that Statlander had to call an audible and just raise a shoulder at the last minute, and then they had to go for it again. It was all a bit messy and bleh. But third time was the charm because the opponents did finally nail the finish on that third attempt. But by then, the pulsating momentum that had been built up to that point had been well and truly lost. And both women just looked genuinely quite disappointed in the aftermath, which was very, very sad. Number 1, Seth Rollins versus Jinder Mahal, WWE Raw, January 15th. Whether you're a lover of the Visionary or find yourself sticking your fingers in your ears every time he cackles through a promo, there's no denying that Seth Rollins has transformed the World Heavyweight Championship from being a second place trophy into a prestigious prize. It really appeared that this freaking champion could put on a 4-star banger with just about anybody on the roster. Then, that date again, January 15th, came around. And Rollins brought a subpar evening of action to an end with easily his worst ever World Heavyweight Championship defense, and possibly his worst main roster match since a certain fiendish Hell in a Cell disaster. Evidently not believing that Jinder Mahal could form one half of a spectacular main event match on his own, WWE decided to pump a ridiculous amount of smoke and mirrors into the contest, with the likes of Sanga, Veer, Drew McIntyre, and Damian Priest all distracting Rollins and the audience away from the drab battle. WWE had done little to establish Jinder as a genuine threat to Rollins' reign with the belt, admittedly, but the excruciatingly basic layout for the match didn't exactly do the modern-day Maharaja any favours either. And while the pair were able to use the many moving parts to create a half-convincing near fall late on, yeah, I did bite a little bit, I'll admit, this monotonous bout will only ever be remembered as the awful match that left Seth Rollins with a battered knee once again and made Tony Khan fume on X. If you like this video, then why not go and check out the 10 worst WWE matches ever according to the internet. It's a video that we made and it's right there. I'm going to assume it's there. Click on it. It's great. Bye bye.